Everybody, welcome to our LinkedIn Live event. I'm your host, Madalina Andrei, former Global Mobility Coordinator, currently Provider Relationship Manager with Expat.global. For those of you not yet familiar with Expat.global, we are the first SaaS-enabled marketplace digital ecosystem in the global mobility sector. Simply put, the first e-commerce platform in global mobility arena that enables the direct relationship between local and regional experts and professionals, offering specialized services such as immigration, visa, tax, social security, destination, relocation services, and corporate clients in need of those services all around the world. This is our 13th LinkedIn Live event from the Expat.NEXUS series, a series which has its main goal to become a place where we can share best practices, learn from each other, and most importantly, grow together. This episode focuses on costs and the global mobility policy revision process while keeping the assignees' performance levels high. International assignments are growing increasingly complicated, right? Not only they are becoming more and more frequent, the expat community gets more varied, diverse. The number of locations is also increasing as companies are trying to seek expansion to new markets. Well, of course, expanding into new areas sometimes requires creating a base from scratch, right? With a lot of costs involved because there are no good practices models to be followed. Even when we are not talking about market expansion, actually having the right people in the right place at the right time, creating solid recruitment and global mobility policies can be actually easier said than done. That's where highly knowledgeable professionals in global mobility sector and Comp and Ben play a role that is paramount to a business success, providing cost-effective solutions for the company that are at the same time motivating for the employees. We'll have some great questions and answers in this session, thanks to the valuable insights from our fantastic expert panel here. But before giving the floor to my guests, I would like to thank all of the attendees for joining and watching the event. Please feel free to drop your comments and address your questions live. We'll try to cover as best as we can if time allows it. A big thank you to my guests today. I would like to ask my guests to briefly introduce themselves, and I think we can do that alphabetically with Sandrine Bardot.
Okay, thank you so much, Madalina, for having me. My name is Sandrine. I'm French. I'm based in Dubai. I'm a consultant and a trainer in compensation and benefits, total rewards really, because I do performance management and other things as well. I've been in the rewards space for 28 years. I was blessed to work with very nice organizations like Airbus, Philips, Fiat, Microsoft, Apple, and so on. And my last two corporate jobs, I moved to the UAE, to Dubai, and I was the global head of performance and reward for a local conglomerate, actually the largest employer in the Gulf countries, and called Majid Al Futtaim, and they own the mall with the ski slope, in case you want a reference. And then later on to lead the global performance and reward for Mubadala, which is a sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi. And I've been independent consultant for the past 8 years. I'm very, very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandrine. Sandra Corona.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today and for Madalina to accepting my request to come on board and talk. So I have 17 years of experience in global mobility, and I've big corporations and one small SME. Then in that time, prior to the pandemic, I started, I didn't work for 4 years, and then all of these questions started happening and it came on time. So during the pandemic, I acquired several, let's say, certifications in ICQ, Global Disc, coaching currently, that's what I'm doing, Adapt and Succeed with Sunday Bean, and then thanatology. So what I do is I combine all of this knowledge and I funnel it into one single space where you can find all that empathy that people are looking for to understand Pre-pandemic, nobody wanted to talk about it. Post-pandemic, everybody needs it. So that's me. So we're still in process. I'm still finding my niche. So bear with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra, very much. Michael Tomsett.
Thank you, Madalena. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's great to be on the show with Sandrine and Sandra. Good to meet you. My name's Mike Tomsett. Well. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. My name's Mike Tomsett. I'm Vice President Retail Business at Projectbased. I'm based in Switzerland. I come originally from Scotland. I've lived for around 20 years now in Switzerland. And in the past, I've worked for the UK Foreign Office and for PwC. Today at Projectbased, I'm responsible for serving private clients for our service delivery towards individuals. This is an area we've gotten into at Projectbased already, more than 5 years ago, and we've developed it on an ongoing basis. Projectbased is a originally Swiss company, but now we're really a European organization. We're in 5 of the, I guess, the top European relocation countries, and yeah, we're expanding quickly, and we plan to be in more markets soon as well. I'm great to be here and looking forward to the call today.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks a lot, Michael, and thanks a lot, all of you. I will start with planning, and I will start with Sandra, because everything starts with planning, right? So let's think about, Sandra, what should a global mobility, HR in general, right, have in mind when they need to plan an international assignment, right? What would be the main points they should take into account when assessing, on the one hand, the best type of assignment, and on the other hand, the best potential candidate for an assignment?
Oh, okay. So I would say, if everybody has heard the typical location. That's basically the most important thing that everybody thinks about. So part of knowing about location, where you're going, what are you trying to do, meaning that you have to know about laws. You have to know the labor laws, the local laws. You have to know visa accessibility. You have to know about, let's say, what are you trying to achieve, right? When you're building this expat assignment. With that, once you know the location, you're going to assess risk, housing, which is what everybody, believe it or not, every single expat, that is their biggest concern, because everybody, like they say, and I don't know how many people have heard this, but happy wife, happy life, right?
Yeah, true.
So everybody is always wondering, like, where am I going to live? How am I going to do this? Is the company going to provide it? How close is it? Is it going to be in an expat assignment? I mean, so many things that have to do, because with housing is how you determine the location, the driving distance, the facility, the schooling, right? Everything, accessibility is what determines location. That's why number one place is location, location, location. And just to name a few and being very, very general. But then comes, for example, labor laws, right? In labor laws, you have to understand certain countries, such as where I'm at in Saudi Arabia. You have to know how many local employees or local people you have to employ. How many can you employ of foreign labor, and how many of your people you can bring, so as to stay within the regulations, right? Because companies and countries can fine you if you exceed or not stay within those conditions. And then what makes a good expat? I have to say, I have to confess that one of the things that I was writing just a couple of months ago was, what makes a good expat, right? What is the ideal client for every single mobility partner? And
if there is such a thing.
If there is such a thing, exactly. And my answer is, I came to this conclusion, is that every single person is an ideal candidate. What we have to do as corporations, HR, and then us as global mobility, to develop people, is to start from day one. right? We forgot, or we did not exercise the practice of developing people, because what every single company does, and still to this day tell you, your personal development is yours to do, right? Our role is to give you the skills or develop your skills, basically, that's it. But your personal development is yours, which is where we stay behind, which is why people are not ready for the post-pandemic process. So I always say that everybody's a potential expat, but now looking into it in a deeper level, you know, we missed the part as global mobility partners to prepare the expats culturally, prepare them in inclusion, humanity, and grief, right? Because in grief, you give yourself empathy and you give others empathy. In culture, you give yourself the ability to see things from different perspectives, not just one, but in different ways. You can create models, mind models, to help the person see things from a different perspective, not just, well, this is my culture, this is where I come from, and this is what I'm used to, right? The us and the them, that creates distance, that creates non-inclusivity, which is what we've all been talking about, right? And then the self-inclusion coined by Chabatoth, which is to say, you know what, you should never expect for people to give your hand extended and say, hey, do you want to integrate? That's not true, right? Maybe children do that. Leave it to children to show us how to do it, right?
Yeah, up to 5 years old.
Exactly. But we should also do that by ourselves. We should self-include ourselves and participate and say, I'm here, I'm showing up for myself, and this is what I do. So that is our role as global mobility partners. And on top of that, we are their coaches. We miss that part. We have to retrain ourselves. So all of those certificates have to be worth for something, right?
It's great. It's great, Sandra, that it's great that we're starting with emotions and culture and inclusion, and we are getting right into cost cutting and figures and numbers.
Yes.
But it's great. Anyway, thank you very much for this answer. Thank you. I would go to Michael. I know Michael that, well, global mobility policy consulting is not among the core services that your company provides. Right. But if your expert opinion, let's imagine, were to be requested by a client, right? What would you advise clients? What would be the main points a client should take into account when developing a policy, be it at a regional level or country level?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. You know, so we have some insight into policies for our clients, you know, for sure. But you know, we certainly wouldn't want to say that we're a global mobility policy consulting organization. Mm-hmm. That's actually not where we are. Mm-hmm. PAC-IMPEX is a local organization on the ground in the 5 countries that we're currently active in, and what I think we see is, we do see the policy when it concerns the services that we can deliver. And we do sometimes see a global policy, and where we get involved is to advise on how to localize that global policy. Right? So, you know, how do global policies apply in Belgium, in Germany, in Switzerland, or the UK? And so I think that's the first thing. We don't have like a total global oversight, and that's why I'm happy to be on a call with experts that do have more of a global perspective. The other thing that we do see is that the policy has to, often matches the company's culture. So there's no one size fits all. And I think, in the markets we're in, we've seen a lot of traditional clients, but also high-tech kind of businesses, high-tech companies, big tech. We've done a lot for them recently. And what we really see is that the culture of the company reflects in the policy.
How exactly?
Well, like
if you can share with us a few details.
Yeah, no, banks like it the old-fashioned way, the hand-holding, the traditional, the full service. For us at PAC-IMPEX, we do this. We've come from doing that, but it starts to feel a little bit old-fashioned. And what we like about working with tech companies, you know, is that their employees have a real self-service culture. So they want to do things by themselves. And, you know, it's like, how much should they do? How much should we do? Can we meet in the middle? And we've had to adapt, or, you know, we've spent many years now adapting our entire service delivery towards that kind of team player, you know, hand-in-hand approach that really has to do with listening to the client and then delivering the service they need, rather than saying, you know, this is our service, you can take it or leave it.
Take it.
Yeah. So we think it's really about the company culture. It's also not, from what we've seen, it's also not about the position in the company hierarchy. So, you know, some of the tech companies we've served, the CEO is coming in doing self-service practically as well.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, in a bank, if you or in a global food kind of client of ours, you'd never move the CEO on sort of semi-self-service. So it really has to do with the company culture and how much people are used to Googling, checking, you know, searching, doing things by themselves.
Super. Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Usually, mobility professionals are considering various solutions, right, to save money on individual assignment packages. They might take into account the quality of living, the housing benefits. They might be eliminating some expenses, eliminating some services completely, or reducing some of the packages that they currently have. I'm thinking, Sandrine, what should comp and ben professionals and HR in general, but comp and ben in particular, consider when they have to keep the transferees happy, right, and productive, and at the same time to keep the costs low, right? How do you juggle these? Because it's not exactly easy to tick both of the boxes.
Yes. I think it's inherent to quite a lot of things that we deal with in Total Rewards. You know, there's this tension between spending and trying to save money at the same time. I would say that the one thing which is really, really important is that at the beginning, when the company was designing its international assignment policy, it has to really think of the different types of assignments it wants to offer and what are the purposes of those different types of assignments. The person who's asking to relocate for personal reasons to another country because they're getting married to somebody who's local or whatever, is not going to be at all on the same kind of neither expectations nor the same kind of package than the one that you're sending who is super experienced and who's like opening a new country and so on, and where you have to really look into
stimulate.
And some of the aspects of the risks associated sometimes to some countries, or the hardship associated to some countries, or on the contrary, the fact that it's like a super wanted type of relocation that everybody wants to go to.
Yeah.
And the executives versus those that you send because they're high potential and you want them to grow their skills and so on, you're not going to approach those people the same way. You're not going to approach the type of assignments the same. And I think that not having that clearly defined and being kind of vague into saying, oh, we just want to send somebody abroad because we think it's right, is probably a big area where you can do some savings, because you need to have purpose for the assignment. And I would say as well, I really think that actually there are some places, and Sandra kind of touched on that, where we're not spending enough. And it's actually costing a lot of money to the organization.
If not addressed.
Yes, so I've been myself an expat. I relocated 3 times to Italy and to the UK before I moved to the UAE, and I didn't know it would be almost a permanent. I mean, I've been in the UAE for 14 years now, so it's almost a permanent move. And as much as my first expatriation was to Rome, and I'm French, so we have quite a close culture, but actually I didn't have any support from a language perspective nor a cultural perspective. And it made the integration much more difficult. And I was lucky in a sense that I went there alone. I didn't have a family or anything like that. So I don't know if it was good or bad, but at least I was not like having to deal with potentially, you know, spouse issues. And I think that the fact of not providing that might have deterred somebody else and might have made the move a failure. And when it's a failure, you need to repatriate the person. Sometimes the person resigns. I mean, it's a huge cost to the organization compared to the ongoing cost of keeping the person over there and happy.
We have the failure question a bit later.
Yeah. So I think it's important sometimes to see that some elements of the package are actually an investment to ensure the success of the expatriation, and while others are more like a financial reward. Which is looking into, as I was saying, either the hardship, the cost of living, and all these aspects. And those can be tweaked more easily and with less consequences, I would say, than the ones that allow for a better integration of the assignee into their new location, in my opinion. So I would probably try to think about it that way. Am I selecting the right kind of assignment? Am I sending the right person for that assignment? Do we really need to send somebody? And then where can I make some cost saving? Probably not on the stuff that that helps on the integration, but more on the ongoing basis. Some of the elements of some packages might be more easy to maybe reduce.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Sandrine. I'm getting back to Sandra now, talking about keeping transferees happy, right? And Sandrine mentioned a bit earlier, like difficult locations, or because there would be sometimes there are various reasons because of which employees do not want to take an assignment, right? They don't want to, or they don't consider it appealing. Yeah. It can be from personal reasons or I don't know, location attractiveness or various reasons. And therefore, there will be a certain need for some incentives, right? Should mobility practitioners take into account, what should they take into account when they're devising such an incentivizing scheme, right, for their assignees? Perhaps you can share some examples with amazing results.
Yeah, so I would have to say that I worked in the several companies that I've worked for, only two I can consider to be focused on the employee. And both of them, you're talking about 12 years of difference between one and the other, but they both did the same thing. And this was stocks. So for many employees, stocks are subjected to headquarters, right? If you're working in the headquarters, you're going to have access to stocks. All other affiliates in other parts of the world usually don't have access to the same stocks or to the stocks that everybody wants. But when you become an expat, you immediately open your people the opportunity to buy or have access to those stocks. If you are, let's say,
a stock option plan being like a benefit, right?
Yes, definitely. And that is based on headquarters stocks, right? The ones that everybody wants access to. Then if you are part, let's say, of a joint venture, you create as a company stocks that fit into that joint venture that might not immediately give you profit in the first year, but as the joint venture grows, the stock grows in value. So that is kind of exclusive. That's like, yeah, I went on this assignment and I have stocks for this. So it kind of gives them that, you know, like that thing of, yeah, I did that, I can do this, and I got part of it. Sorry, you didn't. You know, it's like the exclusivity thing. Then there's the salary increases. This is the part that I was fascinated with when I was like, oh my God. So the salary increases when you become an expat, you have the salary increase attached to the assignment. So that would be one salary increase in the year. Then you have your home country salary increase attached, right? Which is independent and it's very normal. Then you have the headquarters salary increase. And then you have the one based on performance. So you can have in one single year 4 salary increases, plus that employee level that will get you into better benefits, more money into your retirement fund, and so on, to name a few. So that kind of puts people into that feeling of we're belonging, we're being part of something. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, which gives people the sense of inclusivity, of we are part of something, we're doing things together, is treating everybody the same across the board, regardless of passport. Why do I say this? There's a lot of countries that treat or give salary increases or a certain type of salary based on passport. And the companies that I worked for, they let everybody know the same chances for everybody, same housing, same opportunities, benefits, everything. So I love that of a company because it creates that sense of belonging, right? It brings engagement, it brings opportunity, growth, all of these wonderful things that you get from an employee. Those are 3 successful options that expats get.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Sandra. Thanks a lot. I just want to tell the audience that we did not talk among each other, so we did not arrange the questions, but I had a question for Sandrine regarding the stock option plan. So you see, it's all flowing.
But I would like to make a comment, because I found it interesting that Sandra would dive into the financial incentives. And I personally think that there are other incentives that we can provide to people for international assignment, and things that maybe most companies don't really look into. But, everything that makes the life of that expat a little bit easier on a psychological level once they're there. And one of the challenges that I found in the mobility programs that I managed, whether it was when I was with Microsoft or Fiat or whatever, was this kind of performance management and the career evolution, and especially upon return and throughout the time that the expat, because depending on the assignment, it's not always 1 year. It can be up to 3 + 1 + 1, so up to 5 years in one location before being localized, right? 5 years is a long time, and not having somebody, wherever that person is, who is assigned to support the career of that person, to make sure that their performance is evaluated on the same criteria as everybody else, because sometimes the expectations are a bit different and either higher, or on the contrary, an expectation that because the person is an expat means that they're successful, which is not necessarily correct either. But also, I would say, things that look into helping the person return to the home country or to move on to the next assignment. Big failure for me has been a lot of programs where sending you out, you have the red carpet, and upon returning, it's like 6 months before somebody from corporate that you've never heard of sends you an email saying, hey, dear assignees, so you're supposed to come back in 6 months. Here's the link to the open jobs in the organization. Please find yourself a job to come back. And even the large tech organizations were a little bit like that. And the other thing, so that's the first bad thing. And the other thing, which in my opinion also can prevent people, because people talk, right? So they know this is happening, from coming back, is that then the lack of support upon re-entering the home country, because it is another cultural shock coming back to the home country. Typically an expat has grown a lot on a personal level, emotional level, and not just the cultural and professional, but really being more open-minded and so on. And when they come back and to a, let's say, a purely local job in their home country, there is a whole aspect of their growth which is completely neglected and not used in the new job. And that's very frustrating. And you can really look at your tenure past return to home country. And if you see that there's a big drop in your retention of those people, you know that you're having an issue. And I think that even though those look like they're preventing people from leaving, they're actually an incentive, because when you know that you're going to be taken care of for the whole cycle, not just
from
to convince you to leave, but yes, exactly, but also to come back, you feel more comfortable that you're not sacrificing and taking a risk that is not, that once you have taken that risk and produced and be pressed like the lemon, you know, that when you come back, they don't just say, oh, there's only the zest staying, you can go, thank you, bye. You know, so I think that's quite important to also look into those kind of things to make people feel comfortable with the idea of, because moving is taking a risk.
Correct. Thanks a lot, Sandrine. Thanks a lot for the input. I'll be staying with the incentives and I'll be going to Michael. Sandra and Sandrine talked about various incentive actions a bit earlier. We know some of the DSP services are usually used as an incentive themselves to help assignees accept or not an assignment in certain locations. What kind of services DSP providers should prepare or should have in place for cases like this? And have you ever been in the situation where your services were used to help actually sell the assignment itself or the location itself?
I think to the second point, so have we ever been in that situation? I think it's true to say that we've been in that situation a lot. So at PackImpex, we have found ourselves in front of groups of people who would be heading abroad for, you know, on a group move. So even sometimes even before the group move abroad, we've been called in to kind of, I'm going to say, motivate, encourage people, really to take away the fear by explaining the process. I think a lot of the things Sandrine said, you know, I totally agreed with. The services to help people build a social environment, the social network, the spousal support. But, you know, how to convince people to move. Either you provide them support or you provide them with cash. And we see both, right? And yeah, I did also, and then to the first point, you know, I did also agree with what we discussed about 10 minutes ago about the investment into people. So we see it really as a strategic purchasing to spend on some of these services, because the cost of failure can be huge.
Yeah. So would you say that there are special kind of services that DSPs can have in place? I imagine that there should be perhaps, I don't know, a difference between a simple basic orientation trip, let's say, and one where you know exactly that the HR or the global mobility client is depending on it. The whole assignment depends on that day, you know.
Right. So some, you know, we are often working hand in hand. So our relocation consultants and our specialists are working almost like an extension of the HR and the hiring manager, or, you know, the mobility department. So they need to kind of make that, you know, convince that high potential employee or that executive to make the move. And you know, we're called in for that. And I think that's where, you know, what you said, what services do we offer? Well, of course, orientation tours, that's absolutely classic. I think the presentation, or like spending time with the whole groups before they do moves, you know, I think that's maybe less classic, but it's something we found that when you are dealing with group moves, and that is something that does happen in Europe and I guess in other places, you know, to sit with the whole group and really also have senior management on the company side to engage with us and support us, and we do it together. But what we've also done is after arrival. So one, you know, if we have managed to you know, if the assignees are going ahead with the move, we've put like a life cycle in place as well. So whether it's like a sort of a helpline function, or one thing that we've done really successfully is newcomer support programs, where the newcomers, and I was thinking, Sandrine, what you were saying about repatriation, actually it would be good to have like the repatriates support program as well for the ones coming back, you know. So we've seen it here, we've seen it here in Europe, where, you know, we get people together in groups of newcomers, and we've run a program. It's like somewhere between cultural and social integration, basically, and people go through that course, and I think it helps them to build networks. Yeah, and it, you know, language lessons and spouse support can go in the same direction. You're getting together with people on a regular basis. You build networks, and it really helps with the emotional side, where I think, you know, Sandra's our guru on that today. But yeah. And maybe just the one thing I want to mention, because, you know, I said we're a European country with strong Swiss roots, and actually my favorite one of these was when we had an American.
Yes, that's what I want. Practical examples. Yes.
Practical example. An American electronics company had done a big group move into Zurich. They had a lot of people who were actually, like, lots of families. They were kind of struggling emotionally. You know, the cold Swiss winter, the cold European winter, people struggling emotionally, and so they, you know, the HQ over in New Jersey was like, you know, this group of people, like, we've moved them all over there. We've concentrated a lot of functions into Zurich, and now, you know, these families, like, they're floundering. And you know, us as a DSP, like, what are you going to do? We organized the trip to a chocolate factory. So this was like, what else are you going to do in Switzerland, right? You know, we picked them up on a bus. We took them on a beautiful tour through some nice valleys. There was a tour of the chocolate factory. There was a fantastic evening meal in an Italian pizza restaurant on the side of a lake. This kind of stuff, I think, is no, you know, that's not in our service catalog either. But this is probably where you can, if you listen to your customer and you listen to their problems, these are the kind of solutions that you can put in place. So yeah, we're open to that kind of thing.
And that really make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Chocolate solves many problems.
Yes.
That's great, Michael. That's great. Thanks a lot. Sandrine, thinking about your clients, right? And also the changes companies made during this period regarding the policies. We are super curious to find out what was popular for the assignees in the benefit packages, right? And what was not. And if there was anything removed, was it replaced with anything else, or was it just removed?
So I think, to be honest, I mean, what I've seen, maybe if I look back to the pandemic, what I've seen is that a lot of organizations, what they did when the pandemic started was to really send people home as soon as they started to realize that borders were closing, started to try and send their expats back home as much as they could, or at least the families in some cases, if the assignee needed to stay, and shuttered even their whole global mobility teams. I personally know of a number of people who were global heads of international mobility who lost the job. Around the end of 2020, so, you know, time to take care of making sure everybody was back in the home country, and companies at that point in time were saying no more business travel, no more international assignees. So it's not even that they were cutting some parts of whatever, it was like shut it down. I think that now they're coming back to a different way of thinking. There was a lot of maybe I won't say panic, but let's say a skin deep type of reaction, because of course we'd never been in such a situation before. But I think that there is going to be more focus on some, maybe some elements of the package, but mostly more focus on the types of assignees, as I was mentioning earlier, and trying to have more people going on a shorter period of time with a few less benefits, rather than sending people for 3 years immediately. And I think that a lot of organizations are going to try to work more on the basis of project, which in a way also makes sense, because when you, so if I take a step back from a Containment point of view, what we see in the world of work today is that companies are moving away from jobs that are really defined towards tasks and towards agile work, which means that the people are assigned to a specific project and they work more on this basis rather than having a specific position with a reporting line and so on. They move from project to project. And so what we're going to see probably is more things that are related to that, project-based expatriation. So that would have a duration which is not the traditional, you know, is it 6
like
months or more? Is it 1 year,
yeah.
5 years? Exactly. It will be project-based. And I think in those cases where organizations are maybe, if they have a place where they're sending a lot of people, trying to contain costs by maybe moving away from giving cash for the housing, but providing accommodation, because that might be a cost-saving opportunity for them, as they can replace people and they change whoever is in the apartment or the villa. And seeing things like changing, you know, moving more to kind of extended business trips and the like. So I think it's more of a, it's not a redefinition of package, it's more of a redefinition of what do we want to do with our global mobility approaches, which is in itself then going to have an impact of, as a result, what do we offer? There will still be these 5 years or 3 year assignments for the high potentials or the high level executives, but the selection, and you were mentioning in your first question, the selection of who goes will be deeper or more strict than it was before, I think. Yeah. I think.
Fantastic, Sandrine. Talking about benefits and the popularity of various perks against others, I'm thinking now if there is any connection between the benefits, the type of assignments, the actual employee chosen to take up an assignment, and the assignment failure. And now I would like to hear Sandra's opinion on what would be the elements that, well, to consider an assignment as being failed, right? And if there is any trigger included in the global mobility policy that causes the respective failure, if there is one.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things that that happens during, that we don't see, that we don't know of, is that I've always, well, coming from my background, I've always worked in projects. It's never been, you know, go and sit down and just do global mobility stuff. It's actually being on projects. So the experience of being a project is to let people know that when you hear about a project, it has been 3 years in the making. And this is that there has been, excuse me, job fairs, internal employee selection, the planning of who are the ideal candidates for that project in particular, meaning, do you want seasonal employees? Do you want the juniors? Is this an opportunity for people to practice, to have rotators? Can we do business? Should we go here? Should we go there? That kind of selection happens. The writing up the agreements, the legality, the policy format, what's going to happen, how are we going to train, how are we going to provide, how are we going to communicate the benefits to the employees, the assignment, the cost, what are we going to do throughout the assignment, the pre-departure, the assignment, the repatriation, right? So all of those things come into account when you have a good program. That means that in the repatriation process, when people know that they're going to return, you as a good company should have been working on that package, a year before. Your responsibility as the manager and as the Global Mobility Department head of that. We worked in populations, right? Each global mobility partner has a geography. You have to be specialized in that, understand what happens, what not, what doesn't work, and what works. Excuse me. And if your understanding of the population's needs, of the assignees, that are going, how many have children, how many are going single, how many are married unaccompanied, how many are just starting, how many are new, you cannot set expectations, which I heard it and it sounded so harsh the first time that I heard it. Setting expectations since day one is all of this planning that I just told you. By the time it hits my desk, it's because the people like the managers, the leaders, the directors already worked this out for me. right? And so if I, as a global mobility, fail to communicate, be honest, straightforward with the expat, and not understand their needs beyond the compensation side, you start having expats that, me as an expat, we go through, I don't know if anybody has heard, but the Kubler-Ross model, which is all those feelings, the grief, the rejection, the denial, the, you know, I know this, I'm supposed to know this. Anger, yes, bargaining, you know, and then finding meaning or purpose. You go through all of that because your issues go beyond finances. They go in a personal level that are not addressed. And these are not addressed also when it comes time to repatriation, right? Which is what Sandrine was saying. You need to address your employees' needs because you no longer have, nobody is who we were 5 years ago or a year ago, right? Or 2 years ago. You now have new acquired skills. Everybody has learned new things. So if you do not understand, know, or how to apply those in your corporation once they come back, where are you going to place them? What are you going to do for them? How are you going to keep them motivated? Giving them opportunity to control their future in the company is key. If you do not give your employees the flexibility to make their choices of where they want to go after this last assignment, you know, going back to back, being nomads, whatever, there's so much to keep in mind that can make an assignment successful or break it. Good planning.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Please,
I think also when you're talking of expats, if you're thinking of, let's say, the more type of elite expats, so either your high potentials or your senior executives that are going to a country to set it up or to save a country or whatever, where there is a lot of struggle, I think we really need to come to the personal level of protection. Those people are taking a risk for their career, but also for the employer. And I think that we need to be able to communicate to them, for example, on the quality of the healthcare protection. And a lot of people realized it in a more vivid way when the pandemic started, that, oh, where does my cover take me? Can I go back to my home country to get, if I get sick on something? COVID was very scary. And people had not necessarily always really thought what happens if something really bad happens from a health point of view to me and to my family. Maintaining the pension in the home country, especially if this is like a one-off assignment. People who are, you know, those permanent expats like you have sometimes in hospitality who move from one country to another, or in oil and gas. It's a whole different conversation. But and I would say making sure that they don't lose anything. So currency protection in case, you know, I don't know, situation goes bad like it did in Lebanon or some other countries where you really have massive devaluation. And so on. You need to have those mechanisms in place, even if you're not really talking about them immediately, but you need to be able to activate them very quickly. And it's important because it gives that sense, additional sense of security. I'm not talking of the physical security here, but it's kind of the employer is really looking out for me and making sure that my needs can be covered, not just in the immediate, but should something bad happen or when I come back, and that I'm not losing on the rights that I've acquired for my pension or something like that. So I think this is quite important beyond the obvious, you know, I need a good housing, I need to be able to access proper education for my kids and this kind of stuff.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sandra and Sandrine. Michael, I'm getting back to you now, thinking about international assignment packages, right? So you're covering 5 of Europe's top 10 relocation destinations: Switzerland, Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, and the UK. Yeah. More countries are following soon. Is there anything you noticed about international assignment packages? Has anything changed? Are there any new trends out there?
I mean, absolutely. So I think it's about the flexibility and about how important it is to listen to people and listen to your clients these days. Flexibility has been coming for a while, right? I think we've always had to be flexible, especially people really in global mobility, dealing with global organizations and global people. The two mega trends we've seen in the industry, obviously, it's COVID and it's the freight shipping crisis, let's call it like that, the freight shipping situation. So I think on a kind of a mega trend level, really also connecting to some of the things we discussed before, the trend towards shorter assignments. All of this is kind of playing together, because if you're going to do a shorter assignment, you don't necessarily want to be shipping household goods from, we did a quotation a couple of weeks ago for like a 30 cubic meter move from Qatar to Switzerland, and the price was astronomical, and we figured out for the customer that rental furniture would have been half the price for over a 2 or 3 year period, half the price of shipping your goods. So I think, and if Sandrine's saying that shorter projects are coming up, then I think this kind of trend to flexibility is coming. Rental furniture as a flexible solution, the accommodation as a flexible solution, and then let's not forget about Gen Z and the millennials. They're used to doing things by themselves, like I said earlier with the whole self-help thing. Company culture is really about listening to what is it people, where does the client actually need help, and adapting your service delivery to what their needs really are. And so I think that trend to flexibility is for sure the wave that we're riding at PackInPex. We've had to think very hard about it, and we see that the kind of the landscape for relocation services, or for DSP services, is a lot around the traditional packages, the way that DSP services have been for a long time. Then the time-based packages, and then there's this points-based package system coming up, where the assignee gets a certain number of points and they should choose from a service range. And there's pros and cons to all of these, of course. But we like the idea of the time-based package. We're seeing that a lot more, where you get a certain amount of support, and then it's like, choose what it is you need. If you already speak French, like Sandrine does, you probably don't need help calling around in French-speaking Switzerland to make appointments. So why would we include that in the package? Let's use the budget somewhere else. That's the kind of flexibility I think that we want to see in service delivery these days.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks. Switching to Sandrine. I have a very, very specific question, Sandrine. What can be removed from the compensation and benefits packages that generates the highest cost-saving result for a company? And if you can share some examples.
Tax protection. The tax protection is probably one of the most expensive parts of a classic international assignment, especially if you move to a place where you need to then tax the benefit of being tax protected, which really increases the cost. I remember when I was in the UAE, I had a client who were sending some of their UAE nationals to London for a 2-year period. And they were hired by a partner company who was training them basically in how to do things the Western way, and paying them minimum wage over there. But the company was super generous, was maintaining full salary in the UAE with no tax, was paying for their accommodation, was paying for their transportation, was even paying for their food. I mean, it was really like over the top. I'd never seen anything that generous anywhere. And we kept saying to those employees, you need to keep all your receipts because there's going to be tax and you're going to have to pay tax, which they didn't understand. And because there's no income tax in the Gulf countries, so that the concept was completely alien to them. And then the company started to realize that this was not costing them 2 to 3 times the normal cost of an employee. It was costing them 4 to 5 times per year for each assignee. And I told them, just protecting them is costing the company a fortune, you know, and do we have to 100% tax protect or not? Maybe not. I mean, it's truly a philosophy, and what do you want to achieve with that specific type of assignment? But I think, yeah, the tax protection, and the adjustment to the cost of living and the hardship and so on, I think are more essential to an assignment. The tax protection, it comes from all the times, you know, old practices and so on. And I think as we see that there are more and more local plus types of packages, you know, of people who relocate on a local contract with an element of housing or something, an extra. And are completely understanding that they are not going to move and being tax protected, but they're positioned in the same, so let's be technical compensation people, they are positioned in the same compa ratio in their salary range. So if my salary in France at 60,000 euros would be 85% of my salary structure, maybe in the UAE, it's a completely different number, but that's also 85%, which kind of maintains my cost of living in a way, without having to do all of that. People are getting more used to not having that tax protection. So that probably would be one of the most expensive things that you can probably start to reduce or get away with, or you could say, hey, we tax protect anything above a certain amount, or 50% or 70%, whatever, you know, there are different ways. You don't have to go from full to nothing, but there are probably caps or hurdles that you can implement to try and control that cost a little bit.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sandrine. As we are coming to the end of our session, I have a challenge. I still want to have 2 questions for Michael and Sandra. So let's see how we do that. So Sandra, I'm remaining on the cost saving action. I know you have an exceptional achievement, right, in your record. You managed to reduce costs upon repatriation. And by the way, Isabel Cudel says hi, and she thanks you for mentioning the importance of planning ahead for repatriation.
Thank you.
And you improve shipment practices to reduce costs upon repatriation, roughly around like $10 million, if I read that correctly. How did you manage to do that? What did you see that nobody else saw? What happened there?
So, as global mobility partners, we hire the service providers. We rely on the service providers' work to do. The company sets, let's say in the package, you say, well, if you need to repatriate and you need to bring things home, this is the size of the shipment that you're going to need, and this is the cost. We put it there as part of the package because we say in the event that you need it and if you're eligible, right? You have to keep in mind that not everybody is coming new into the assignment. Some of them are coming from back to back, meaning that they're bringing shipment from other locations. They accumulate and they want to take all of that they've gathered either back home and then ship new stuff from home into the other third location. So there's a lot of costs. The problem comes when people feel that they're, oh my God, and I'm so sorry. I'm an expat, okay, guys, so be nice with me. We feel that we're entitled to that amount. We say, well, it's there, you know, we might as well use it. So we don't know that the expat is making this negotiation with the service provider. So me as a global mobility, as long as they keep the information simple, I'm going to prove it because I'm going to say it's repatriation, they're entitled to it, or eligible, that's the real word. They're eligible for it, it fits the criteria, boom, I approve it. But what's really happening behind the scenes is that they're doing all of this movement that is really not approved. And we face not only using that budget, but exceeding it, because when you go through different ports, not all ports have the same cost in customs. They can increase from the double to the triple numbers.
Yeah.
And so I was not looking into that. I said, let me see, there's something wrong here. There's something going on. And I started looking with one single expat. It escalated to an entire global across the board thing. That's how the company got to save $10 million, because per every assignment, it at least costs $500,000 to move an expat. Just do the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sandra. And Michael, because you're going to have the last word, right? You're surrounded by three beautiful ladies, amazing ladies. So we give you the last. We talked about
no pressure, right?
We talked enough about cutting costs, right? But if some important elements are eliminated from the assignees packages, right? This will affect the well-being of the expatriates and the overall, in the end, success of an assignment, right? So I'm asking, my question would be, what would be those must-have, those essential elements that should never ever be removed?
So from good question. So our point of view as the service provider in local markets, helping people to arrive, find a home, settle in, deal with immigration, all of that stuff. Our point of view is clear. Anything where there's a contract, you should be reaching out to somebody that's got experience and know-how. So there's, and there are some steps where there aren't contracts. So whether it's, digging up your ideal, your dream house on a property platform, you can take that out of packages. People can do that by themselves in a lot of countries these days. But when it comes to signing a lease, or when it comes to filling out immigration documentation, visa applications, these kind of things, anywhere where there's a contract and you're signing up for something, we think that you should have professional support. And, that's where we're specialized, of course. But that's what I meant before about the flexibility. A lot of people want to do things themselves these days. There's a lot of good resources on the internet, and go for it. We think you should, let's grab those opportunities. But if you're going to sign something and it's going to be locking you in, that's where you should have support.
Super. Well, that would wrap up this session. It's been great. I'm sure our audience has found it extremely interesting. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us, for the great insights you have shared with us. Thank you to our audience for watching. In case you need further expert advice or you have any kind of questions, please reach out to my guests directly. I'm sure they will be able to, will be happy to support and help. Meanwhile, please follow our Expat Global pages on LinkedIn and YouTube to get updates on our new live events, on hot topics in the global mobility sector. And I guess I'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Nice to see everybody.